Imagine the depths I would go to stay alive, fueled by my singular hatred for you.
Chapter 1. Path to a Sith Lord. Maul, a male Zabrak, was born on Dathomir. His mother was Kysina, a Night Sister belonging to Mother Talzin's coven, and his father was a Zabrak Night Brother, who was slain shortly after Maul's birth according to the Dathomirian tradition. As a Night Brother, Maul belonged to a clan of male Zabraks who served as warriors and subordinates to the dominant Night Sisters. Maul had two blood brothers, Ferrell and Savage Opress. His mother, Kysina, wished for at least one of her sons to escape Mother Talzin's influence. Less than a year after Maul's birth, she encountered Darth Sidious on Dathomir, who at the time was still the apprentice of Darth Plagueis. She pleaded with him to take Maul away from the life of a Night Brother. Although hesitant at first, Sidious sensed the infant's strong connection to the Force and agreed to take him, seeing the potential of forging his own apprentice out of the infant. Maul spent his early years under the care of droids, particularly TDD-9, at a secret facility on Mustafar. A year after he was taken, Sidious received permission from Plagueis to train him as an apprentice. However, Plagueis instructed Sidious to withhold the deeper Sith knowledge, intending for Maul to serve as an assassin rather than a Sith Lord. Life as Sidious's pupil was brutal. Soon after Maul could start training, Sidious personally branded him with black Sith tattoos in order to push him more toward the dark side. During his training, which included agility exercises as well as working with a computer console to increase his knowledge on the galaxy, any mistake was met with incredible cruelty. During a training exercise, TDD-9 struck Maul repeatedly with a wooden staff. In frustration, Maul instinctively used the Force to pull the weapon into his hands. When TDD-9 reported this to Sidious, the Sith Master was pleased. This was the first time Maul had used the Force actively. Sidious went on to take Maul to Tost, where he started teaching him in the ways of the Force. In their first exercise, Sidious threw rocks at the young boy in order to fuel his rage. Encouraging Maul to use his anger and pain, Sidious watched as the boy eventually retaliated, throwing some rocks back at him. Pleased by the result, Sidious brought the boy back, encouraged that his pupil was going to be a great asset. Back on Mustafar, Maul endured grueling training, including being chained upside down and lowered toward a vat of acid, forcing him to escape using the Force. During this time, Sidious started educating Maul about Sith history, detailing conflicts with the Jedi, including Naga Sadow's Great Hyperspace War, the rise of Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma, Darth Revan and Malak's betrayal, as well as the fall of the Brotherhood of Darkness. He also explained the Rule of Two established by Darth Bane. Sidious instilled in Maul a deep hatred for the Jedi, convincing him that, had it not been for the Sith, the Jedi would have found him on Dathomir and turned him into a mindless, obedient servant for the Republic. To demonstrate this, Sidious took Maul to Coruscant, where they stood disguised among tourists outside the Jedi Temple. Cloaked by the Force, Sidious pointed out individual Jedi, whispering to Maul about their ignorance of the Sith's impending return. Delighted in the presence of his future enemies, Maul eagerly absorbed his master's lessons, preparing for the day he would strike against the Jedi. Later down the line, during another visit to Tost, Sidious introduced Maul to a lightsaber with which Maul effortlessly cut down every tree in sight. His decade of training has slowly paid off. He had become a valuable weapon for the Sith. At the age of 10, Maul was sent to the Academy on Orsis to hone the skills of an assassin. Sidious instructed him to refrain from using the Force to ensure he could rely on his raw abilities as well, rather than just the Force. There, he would train alongside other students in the ways of becoming an assassin. During a break from his assassin's training, Sidious took Maul to the icy world of Megiddo. There, he endured grueling physical challenges, sprinting up and down mountains with near-perfect control. Expecting praise, he was instead hurled into a freezing lake by Sidious, who coldly observed as Maul struggled for survival. Left with no choice, the young Zabrak transformed his fear into anger and fought his way back to shore, only to be met with indifference from his master. The lesson was clear. Pain and suffering were his only companions in this world. Give in to anger, pain, and let it fuel you, or perish. The final trial of Maul took place on Hypori, an Outer Rim world where Maul was abandoned. For weeks, he was hunted relentlessly by hordes of assassin droids, forced to survive with no support. After a month of Maul being pushed to his absolute limits, Sidious returned and challenged his starving, weakened apprentice to a lightsaber duel. Maul, though resilient, was easily defeated. Sidious cast aside Maul's weapon and declared his failure, revealing that he had secretly been training another apprentice to replace him. Overcome with rage and betrayal, Maul lunged at his master, sinking his teeth into Sidious's hand and spitting the blood back in his face. But as his strength faded, he realized he was powerless against the Dark Lord. Resigned to his fate, he prepared for death. Sidious raised his lightsaber and struck. The blade turned out to be harmless. It was only a training saber. Laughing coldly, Sidious revealed the truth. There had never been another apprentice. By attempting to kill his master, Maul had passed the final test. He had proven himself worthy of the Sith. Sidious bestowed upon him the title of Darth Maul, Dark Lord of the Sith, and took him to Coruscant's industrial district. There, a medical droid tended to his wounds, preparing him for the dark future that awaited. Maul's status as a Sith Lord was deliberately kept hidden from Dark Plagueis, as it would have violated the rule of two. Sidious, however, had always intended to claim the mantle of Dark Lord for himself, plotting all along to betray his own master when the time was right. Chapter 2: Assassin for the Sith. Now that he had officially become a Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Maul was often sent on missions for his master, assassinating politicians, merchants, and crime lords. All these missions served one singular greater goal: to cover up the Sith's dealings with different factions, destabilize the Republic while keeping the Sith's involvement hidden. The Sith shall eventually rise again in a grand plan set out by Plagueis and Sidious. For his missions, Maul was provided with a Sith infiltrator called the Scimitar, a heavily modified star courier equipped with a cloaking shield generator in order to carry out his missions in secret. After his first successful missions, Maul longed for a challenge, a Jedi to kill. Maul soon learned of a Jedi Master called Ciolo Urmanka, who had abandoned the lightsaber for a purer fighting style. Maul sought him out and immediately attacked him. To Maul's surprise, he was easily outmatched, as Manka used only a wooden staff to disarm and wound him. However, instead of delivering the killing blow, the Jedi allowed Maul to escape. Refusing to accept failure, and fearing the consequences if he had revealed to a Jedi that he was a Sith assassin, Maul came up with a strategy. In order to beat him, he constructed a double-bladed lightsaber, inspired by ancient Sith schematics and the old Zabrak weapons. When he confronted Manka again, he feigned the same attack pattern, allowing himself to be disarmed. As Manka moved in to finish him, Maul activated his second blade, impaling the Jedi and securing his victory. Proud with himself, Maul returned to Coruscant and informed Palpatine of his success over a Jedi. Palpatine, pleased with his apprentice's progression, congratulated him on his victory. During this time, Palpatine aimed to infiltrate and manipulate the Trade Federation, using them as a tool to initiate the Sith's grand plan and destabilize the Republic. To gain control over the Federation, Palpatine sought out Newt Gunray, an ambitious member of the Trade Federation who was easily swayed to follow Palpatine's orders in exchange for power and influence. To gain the goodwill of Gunray and for him to secure some wins for the Trade Federation and rise through their ranks, Palpatine had Maul do several missions in order to help them. Maul could not hide his skepticism about why the Sith were involving themselves with the Neimoidians. To him, they were weak-willed, greedy, and cowardly. Sidious agreed but reminded him that despite their spinelessness, the Sith needed them for their greater plans. Maul was then sent to Kryia to force the planet's spice merchants into signing an agreement with the Trade Federation, which would then be granted as a win to Gunray. Although he was successful at first, one merchant ignited a protest that soon escalated into a full-scale rebellion. In an act of defiance, the people destroyed their entire spice supply rather than submit. With the entire population against him, Maul could not fight them all and was forced to report his failure to Sidious. Enraged, the Dark Lord lifted his apprentice by the throat with the Force and nearly choked him unconscious. It was a punishment Maul would never forget. Failure under the Siths could mean his death, and he wouldn't allow that to happen ever again. Next order of things, Maul was sent by Sidious to eliminate the leadership of the powerful crime syndicate Black Sun. Black Sun had connections to the Trade Federation, and the Sith didn't want them to potentially leak their involvement with them. Also, they had been involved in an assassination attempt on Darth Plagueis, thus they also wanted to exact their revenge. Maul proceeded to infiltrate the Black Sun fortress and massacred everyone in there. Every guard and the entire leadership was killed. Maul returned to Coruscant and reported his mission's success to Sidious. Pleased, Sidious told Maul to return to Mustafar, satisfied that Black Sun was now in disarray and no longer a threat to the Sith's grand plan. Later, as part of a greater plan to destabilize the Republic as well as removing the threat of the Yunchuri warriors, Plagueis and Sidious orchestrated the Yunchuri uprising, provoking the Yunchuri into attacking the Republic and the Jedi. Darth Maul was sent to recruit a smuggler and intimidate him into compliance. Under the Sith's orders, the smuggler supplied the Yunchuri with weapons, leading to their rebellion against the Republic. When the Yunchuri attacked the Jedi Temple, Maul observed but did not interfere. As the crisis came to an end, Maul noted that the Jedi had emerged victorious, but Sidious saw it differently. The Yunchuri were no longer a threat thanks to the Jedi and the Senate's intervention, which played directly into the Sith's hands, and granting them a small victory. Maul insisted that if he had been deployed alongside the Yunchuri, more Jedi would have died, even going as far as to say that he could have slaughtered every Jedi there, including the younglings and council members. Sensing Maul's bloodlust and eagerness to fight the Jedi, but also his growing arrogance, Sidious went on to remind him that patience was essential. Their time would come to reveal themselves. The Jedi's destruction was not yet their immediate goal. With that lesson imparted, Sidious turned his attention to his next move, setting Gunray up to become the sole controller of the Trade Federation. To achieve this, Maul was sent to destroy 2 rival mining corporations on Dorvala to ensure the Trade Federation could take control over Davala's rich ore trade. Maul manipulated both companies into hiring mercenaries to sabotage each other, leading to their mutual destruction. When the surviving leaders realized they had been deceived, Maul led them into a final battle, then eliminated them himself. He altered evidence to frame each other for the conflict, causing the companies to collapse. Returning to Coruscant, Maul listened as Sidious contacted Gunray. The deception had worked and the Trade Federation gained control over the ore trade. Dorvala now had Senate representation through the Federation, and through this victory, Gunray secured a permanent seat in the Directorate. In a meeting on Eriadu, the other members of the Directorate were assassinated by droids set up by Sidious, making Gunray the sole operative of the Trade Federation. The Sith now had a puppet in power of one of the most influential companies of the galaxy. Over time, the Federation started to build a droid army under the pretense to secure their trade shipments from pirates, all under the influence of the Sith. As the Federation remained stifled under the Republic's newly implemented taxation of the free trade routes, Sidious and Gunray had started to discuss countermeasures, one such being the blockade of Naboo that had been long planned by the Sith. Reassured by Sidious's confidence that Naboo's significance would ensure widespread galactic interest in their blockade, Gunray moved forward with the plan. Deputy Viceroy Hath Monchar, a high-ranking Neimoidian in the Trade Federation, learned about the blockade of Naboo and saw an opportunity to escape and profit by selling this sensitive information. He fled to Coruscant as he found a Sith holocron with the plans laid out, intending to sell it to the highest bidder. Recognizing the danger if the blockade and the Sith's involvement was to be revealed, Sidious ordered Maul to eliminate Monchar and anyone he had contacted. Maul tracked Monchar to his hideout, killed him, and attempted to recover the holocron, only to realize it had already fallen into the hands of information broker Lorn Pavin. This forced Maul into a relentless pursuit across Coruscant, where he ran across and clashed with 2 Jedi, defeating them both. However, Pavin had escaped due to the Jedi's intervention. Pavin ultimately smuggled the holocron to a political ally, unknowingly delivering it into the hands of Darth Sidious, disguised as Senator Palpatine. Maul later tracked Pavin down and executed him, ensuring no witnesses remained. Maul went on to erase any of the Sith's involvement, and the Trade Federation was able to proceed with the blockade of Naboo, setting the stage for the conflict that would lead to Palpatine's rise to power. Chapter 3: Invasion of Naboo. The Neimoidians wasted no time positioning their ships around Naboo, declaring that any attempt to break the embargo would be met with deadly force, and that the Naboo people would starve unless the Republic repealed the new trade regulations. Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum, sensing the political instability of the Naboo blockade, secretly enlisted the Jedi's Council's help. He discreetly sent Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi Wan Kenobi to negotiate with the Trade Federation, catching both Darth Plagueis and Sidious off guard. The Jedi's involvement threatened to expose the Sith's hidden influence, forcing them to accelerate their plans. Sidious ordered the Trade Federation to immediately eliminate the Jedi and invade Naboo ahead of schedule. To calm Gunray's fears of Republic intervention, Sidious assured him that the Sith would take steps to legitimize the occupation. Queen Amidala would be forced to sign a treaty that would officially place Naboo under Federation control. Plagueis saw this as the moment for the Sith to finally reveal themselves, and Sidious vowed to ensure Darth Maul was prepared for the next stage of their plan. Darth Maul had been conditioning his mind and body, rigorously training in the work's combat chamber, when Sidious summoned him via comlink to the strategy room. As he entered, Maul immediately noticed his master's irritated expression. Sidious ordered him to remain in the shadows and listen as he spoke with the Trade Federation leadership who reported on the Jedi's escape. Though Maul remained silent, excitement surged within him at the opportunity to finally face the Jedi in battle yet again. A transmission from the Neimoidians soon followed, informing the Sith that the Jedi and Queen Amidala had escaped the blockade. Furious, Sidious called Maul forward, declaring to the fearful Neimoidians that despite their incompetence, his apprentice would locate their lost ship. A transmission originally sent by Naboo's governor, C.O. Bibble, had been intercepted and edited by Maul into a false distress signal, designed to lure the Queen and her allies into responding. Tracking the modified signal, he determined that they had fled to Tatooine. Sidious ordered him to locate the Jedi first, and then return the Queen to Naboo to sign a treaty, legitimizing the Trade Federation's occupation. Confident in his mission, Maul departed Coruscant aboard the Scimitar. Upon exiting hyperspace, Maul was delayed when he was ambushed by Togorian pirates. To eliminate all witnesses, he infiltrated the pirate freighter and slaughtered its entire crew. The battle left him with a wounded leg, but he resumed his course for Tatooine in a hurry, aware that the pirates might have delayed him long enough to potentially miss the Jedi. He landed on Tatooine under the cover of night, far from the planet's major settlements. He deployed his 3 DRK-1 probe droids to search for the Jedi and the Queen's ship. This allowed him time to tend to the leg wound he had sustained during his battle with the pirates. At dawn, Maul discovered tracks in the sand, leading him to an ambush set by Tusken raiders. Choosing to avoid unnecessary conflict, he retreated, preserving his strength for his true target. His withdrawal was hastened by a signal from his probe droids, which had located a Jedi Master near the Mos Espa Grand Arena. Tracking the Jedis there, Maul investigated a smuggling vessel, Dusty Duck, but instead of the Queen, he found and killed an unfortunate bystander on the smuggler's ship. Soon thereafter, his probes confirmed the Queen's starship was in the outskirts of Mos Espa and that the Jedi was heading there. Wasting no time, Maul sped toward the location of his speeder. Upon arrival, he sensed an unexpected presence, a young boy strong in the Force. Though curious, Maul set aside the thought, focusing solely on eliminating the Jedi and capturing the Queen. Springing from his speeder, Maul ignited a single blade of his lightsaber and engaged the Jedi in combat. The duel was brief but intense, and as the fight went on, he sensed the Jedi tiring. Fueled by the pain in his wounded leg, he pressed the attack, confident that victory was within his grasp. However, the boy had boarded the ship and warned the crew. Their ship took off, and the Jedi leaped onto the ship's boarding ramp, carrying him to safety. Maul watched, seething as the ship disappeared into the sky. Tasting sand and blood in his mouth, he felt the sting of failure. He had been denied his prize, yet instead of despair, he embraced the shame, using it to fuel his rage. Returning to the Scimitar, he transmitted his report to Coruscant, omitting any mention of the Togorian pirates and Tusken raiders. His mission had not gone as planned, but the hunt was far from over. As Maul returned to the works, he braced for the worst, expecting Sidious to unleash his wrath over his failure on Tatooine. However, to his surprise, his master was not angry. Instead, Sidious calmly questioned him about his duel with the Jedi, asking if Maul believed he could have won had the fight continued. Without hesitation, Maul affirmed that he would have, noting the Jedi's age and fatigue. Sidious revealed that Jedi's name to be Qui-Gon Jinn and acknowledged him as a formidable warrior. Despite Sidious's unexpectedly composed demeanor, Maul wrestled with his own frustration. He then quickly realized that regardless of his failure, the Queen would soon bring herself to Coruscant to plead her case before the Senate. His master confirmed this, revealing that the Queen and her Jedi escorts had already arrived on Coruscant. Maul, eager to redeem himself, asked if he should strike them down while they were within reach, but Sidious dismissed the idea as he had other plans for them. Still consumed with shame over allowing Jin to escape, Maul retreated to his quarters, repeating the Jedi's name over and over in his mind. Unlike his usual targets, whose names meant little to him, Qui-Gon Jinn had earned a place in his thoughts. Maul let his hatred fester, using it to deepen his connection to the dark side. Hours later, Sidious summoned Maul back to the strategy room, where he had just returned from the Senate. The Sith Master, barely concealing his pleasure, informed Maul that Queen Amidala had failed to rally the Senate to act against the Trade Federation. With Chancellor Valorum's authority crumbling under political pressure, Naboo was now left defenseless. Sidious then revealed his next move. Amidala, realizing that the Senate would not help her, would return to Naboo alongside the Jedi in due time. To further cement the Federation's control, Sidious ordered Gunray to execute the Queen upon her arrival. When Gunray confirmed that Naboo was fully under the Federation's grip, Sidious was pleased and assured him that he would keep the Senate paralyzed. As he ended the transmission, he turned to Maul with a final order. He was to personally oversee the Federation's occupation of Naboo and ensure that the Queen, along with the Jedi, were to be eliminated. Boarding the Scimitar, Maul departed for Naboo. As the ship moved through hyperspace, he reflected on his mistakes on Tatooine, considering what he could have done differently. Upon reaching Naboo, he observed that the once massive Trade Federation blockade had been reduced to a single Lucrehulk-class control ship. The Neimoidians, obsessed with restoring their commercial operations, had withdrawn most of their fleet. Upon arriving at the palace, Maul assumed command over the Federation's occupation forces, his presence alone enough to instill terror in the Neimoidians. He listened as Gunray rattled off a list of failures like that Resistance forces had disrupted their supply lines, freed prisoners, and even destroyed a Federation mining camp. Maul had little patience for the excuses. The time had come to crush the last remnants of Naboo's resistance. Maul swiftly destroyed Naboo's resistant forces, including a raid on a Gungan village. On Sidious's orders, Maul also tracked down the Forcer Naboo security chief who knew about Palpatine's involvement with Plagueis, ensuring that all loose ends were eliminated. Maul did as ordered and swiftly brought the city back under the Trade Federation's control. Shortly after, Maul received word that Queen Amidala and the Jedi had returned as foreseen. As the Queen and her forces launched their counterattack, Maul intercepted the Jedi in Theed's central hangar. His moment had finally come. Activating both blades of his lightsaber, he prepared to face Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi Wan Kenobi in a duel that would determine the fate of Naboo and prove his worth as a Sith. The duel began with a flurry of strikes as Maul engaged both Jedi simultaneously. He relished the challenge of facing two opponents, but he quickly realized that Jinn's age slowed him just as he had noticed in their first duel, while Kenobi, though fast, lacked the experience of his master. He controlled the battle, using the environment to his advantage, steering the Jedi onto the high catwalks of Theed's power generator complex. With calculated footwork and strikes, Maul separated Kenobi from Jinn, leaving him with just Jinn as an opponent. The duel led them to a long hallway of energy barriers where the security doors activated, temporarily separating the combatants. As they waited for the barriers to deactivate, Maul prowled back and forth like a caged predator, his gaze locked on Jinn. The moment the barrier dropped, Maul lunged at Jinn with a renewed ferocity, forcing him back toward the edge of the central reactor shaft. Jinn fought valiantly, but was at a disadvantage in the confined space. Maul feigned an opening, baiting Jinn into overcommitting, then struck. Spinning his saber staff, he landed a crushing blow with the hilt to Jinn's chin, stunning him. Without hesitation, Maul plunged his blade into Jinn's torso. Kenobi, trapped behind the final barrier, cried out in anguish as he watched his master fall. Maul deactivated his lightsaber and turned, waiting for the last door to release his next opponent. As soon as the barrier dropped, Kenobi attacked in a blind rage, his strikes fast and powerful, momentarily driving Maul back. The young Jedi's aggression surprised him, and Kenobi even managed to sever Maul's weapon in half. But Maul quickly adjusted. With a forced push, he sent Kenobi tumbling into the reactor shaft. The Jedi barely managed to grab onto a nozzle, hanging over the abyss and his doom. Maul paced above, savoring his victory. With a sneer, he kicked Kenobi's lightsaber into the pit, watching it disappear. Kenobi was defenseless. The fight was over. As Maul struck the rim of the reactor shaft with his lightsaber, he sent a cascade of sparks down toward Obi Wan Kenobi, relishing for the moment he could watch the Jedi fall to his doom. Kenobi, however, did not panic. Instead, he reached out to the Force, calming himself and searching for an opportunity. He remembered that Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber still lay near his fallen master, something Maul, in his arrogance and overconfidence, had overlooked. In an instant, Kenobi acted. Using the Force, he propelled himself out of the pit, summoning Jinn's weapon mid-air. Maul barely had time to whirl around in shock before the Jedi delivered a lightning-fast horizontal slash, slicing the Sith in half. Maul's eyes widened in disbelief, his body flinching as pain seared through him. He fell backward into the shaft, his two halves separating. For a brief moment, Maul's mind reeled in disbelief. He had won. He had won. And yet, in an instant, it had all been undone. As this severed body fell into the reactor shaft, he felt only one thing: rage. Chapter 4. Revenge is the only ally. Maul had underestimated the Jedi's resilience, allowing his arrogance and thirst for vengeance to blind him. Instead of focusing on preventing the starships from destroying the droid control ship or ensuring the Queen's death, he had fixated solely on eliminating the Jedi. His impatience and vanity had ultimately cost him everything. Yet, against all odds, Maul survived. As his body plummeted into darkness, his sheer will to live took hold. Fueled by seething hatred and an unyielding drive for vengeance, using everything Sidious had taught him, he reached out with the Force, grasping at anything to break his fall. He managed to catch onto an air vent, slowing his descent before plunging into the waters at the bottom of the shaft. Though his lower body was severed, his mind burned with one thought: Kenobi. Meanwhile, Sidious moved forward with the grand plan. Though Maul's defeat was a setback, even tarnishing his victory over his own master, Darth Plagueis, it was not a disaster. Within a year, he had found a replacement. Count Dooku, the former Jedi Master of Qui-Gon Jinn, was seduced to the dark side and took the title of Darth Tyrannus. Unlike Maul, Dooku was not only a formidable duelist, but also a skilled politician, making him the perfect instrument to ignite the Clone Wars. Eventually, Maul's unconscious, mutilated form was discarded into a waste container and transported to Lotho Minor, a junkyard world filled with refuse and mechanical debris. When he awoke, his body was broken, but his rage was intact. Screaming in fury, he activated his lightsaber and carved his way out of the container. Weak and delirious, he dragged himself through the wasteland. His suffering was interrupted by a distant scream. Turning his head, he spotted an anaconda named Morley fleeing from a massive fire-spewing machine. Summoning the last of his strength, Maul hurled his lightsaber with the Force, striking the machine's head and bringing it crashing down. As the fire extinguished, Maul collapsed into the unconsciousness once more. Recognizing an opportunity, Morley dragged Maul into the depths of Lotho Minor. Awakening in a cave, Maul was once again consumed by rage. His mind, shattered by the torment, clung only to one memory: Obi Wan Kenobi. His hatred was all that kept him alive. With the Force, he fashioned crude spider-like cybernetic legs from the scrap around him, giving himself a grotesque new form. For 12 long years, he survived in near solitude, feeding on small creatures and insects, with only Morley aiding him in finding shelter and food. His memories were fragmented, his identity lost. But one name kept reappearing in his mind: Kenobi. Chapter 5. Return of the Lost Son. In the greater galaxy, the Clone Wars had erupted. Sidious' plan had been set into motion, and he was just going as he had planned. Maul, though, wasn't aware of any of it happening, biding his time in a meaningless existence on Lotho Minor. Mother Talzin, leader of the Night Sisters, was the only one who knew that Darth Maul had survived and was in exile somewhere in the Outer Rim. After she was unwillingly getting drawn into the war by Dooku and Sidious, as well as her disapproval of their treatment of Ventress, Talzin created Savage as an apprentice to Dooku to assassinate him. After Savage and Ventress failed in their attempt to kill Dooku, she gave Savage a talisman infused with Maul's blood to help him locate the lost Sith, assuming the time had come for him to return from his exile. Savage tracked Maul to Lotho Minor and encountered Morley. Morley, assuming Savage to be yet another prey, lured him into Maul's lair, where the deranged Sith attacked him. Savage quickly overpowered the maddened Maul, though, who at this point had no semblance of sanity left. Presenting Maul with Talzin's talisman, Opress helped him reclaim some of his lost memories before bringing him back to Dathomir. There, Talzin used her dark magic to restore his mind and reshape his spider-like cybernetic legs into a more humanoid form. By the time Maul fully regained consciousness, Talzin had vanished. Feeling the Force out of balance, Maul learned from a press that the Clone Wars had begun, and he was furious that such a grand conflict had started without him. Recounting his past to his brother, he revealed his deep hatred for Obi Wan Kenobi. With renewed purpose, Maul accepted the severed half of his old Sith lightsaber that Savage had recovered on Lotho Minor and declared that they would begin their revenge. Chapter 6: A Quest for Revenge. Seeking to draw Kenobi out, Maul and Savage traveled to the planet Raydonia, where they massacred an entire village, broadcasting a transmission to the Jedi Council. He demanded Kenobi face him, knowing the Jedi Master would not ignore the call. Despite the Jedi Council's concerns, Kenobi went alone to confront his old enemy. Awaiting him in the burning ruins of the village, Maul stepped forward, revealing himself to Kenobi. Together, the two brothers easily overpowered Kenobi and knocked him unconscious. Maul, however, did not intend to kill Kenobi quickly. He wanted him to suffer just like he had suffered for all these years on Lotho Minor. As he mocked his prisoner, he expressed disappointment that Kenobi had risen to the rank of Jedi Master, despite, in Maul's eyes, being weak as ever. Before he could continue his torment, an unexpected arrival changed everything. Asajj Ventress, who wanted to settle the score with Savage as well as getting the bounty on him, freed Kenobi. A fierce lightsaber duel erupted inside a cramped cargo hold, resulting in Kenobi and Ventress escaping in an escape pod, leaving the brothers behind. Rather than rage over their escape, Maul remained composed, knowing he had waited years for revenge. He could afford to wait a little longer. Following their skirmish with Kenobi and Ventress, Maul and Opress set out on their bigger goal, building an empire for themselves to enact their revenge on all of Maul's enemies who had betrayed him, including Sidious. They traveled to Yellowblade's Landing and attempted to recruit mercenaries. However, the local gang rejected them, leading the brothers to slaughter the entire gang. Continuing on their mission of building their own army, they were soon intercepted by a Jedi strike team of 5 Jedis led by Obi Wan Kenobi and Plo Koon. The brothers managed to separate the Jedi though, killing all but Kenobi and Plo Koon before escaping. Later, on the mining world of Morjon, the brothers' growing reputation earned them a bounty, making them extremely wanted in the galaxy. Unconcerned by that though, they raided an intergalactic banking clan space station in the Cyblock system, destroying the station's droid security and stealing vast sums of credits. After having secured the credits, Maul wanted to make sure to establish himself as the dominant Sith amongst the two brothers. From here on out, he would be the master and Savage the apprentice. Now that they had the credits, they went to Florum, where they sought to recruit Weequay pirates under Hondo Ohnaka. Some pirates joined them willingly, but others, including the pirate Captain Hondo, resisted. However, their conquest was interrupted when Obi Wan Kenobi and Adi Gallia tracked them down yet again. Another fight ensued, this time leading to Galla's death at the hands of Savage. Maul continued his duel with Kenobi inside Ohnaka's base, but when Opress lost his arm in the fight to Kenobi, Maul recognized that need for strategic retreat. They attempted to escape, only to be betrayed by the pirates that had originally promised them their allegiance. Desperate to get away, the brothers make a run for their ship. During the escape, Maul got one of his cybernetic legs blasted, and their ship, along with all their credits, was shot down. They managed to escape in an escape pod, but Maul's plan had failed, and they were worse off than ever before. Chapter 7: The Shadow Collective. After escaping Florum, Maul and Savage Opress found themselves adrift in an escape pod, slowly losing consciousness from lack of oxygen. Their lifeless bodies drifted through the void until they were discovered by an advanced force of Mandalorians led by Pre Vizsla, leader of the Death Watch. Seeing Maul's Sith lightsaber, Vizsla chose to spare them, declaring that any enemy of the Jedi was an ally of Death Watch. The Mandalorians took the unconscious brothers back to their base on Zanbar. On Zanbar, medical droids tended to Maul's injuries, replacing the legs he had received from Mother Talzin with a new pair of humanoid mechanical limbs, as well as replacing Savage's arm with a mechanical one. When Maul awoke, he was greeted by Vizsla and Bo-Katan. Maul revealed that they were Sith Lords and seek revenge against the Jedi, particularly Obi Wan Kenobi. Intrigued, Vizsla ordered their recovery to continue. Later, Maul met with Vizsla, drinking Cassius tea in his shelter. As they talked, Vizsla revealed that he wanted Mandalore to return to its ancient warrior tradition, which had been exiled by the pacifistic New Mandalorians under Duchess Satine Kryze. After the very Jedi responsible for their defeat was none other than Kenobi, realizing they shared a common enemy, Maul proposed an alliance to eliminate their enemies together, claiming it was the will of the Force. With Death Watch at his side, Maul convinced Vizsla that they needed an army. Their first target was Black Sun, the powerful criminal syndicate. Maul remembered how he had once sowed chaos within Black Sun years ago, and he intended to do so again. Upon meeting the Black Sun ruling council, Maul proposed an alliance. The Black Sun leaders mocked his offer, refusing outright. Savage responded by cutting them all down without hesitation. Only one council member, Zeton Maj, survived and, seeing Maul's strength, pledged Black Sun's loyalty. Next, they traveled to Nal Hutta, demanding the allegiance of the Hutt cartel. When the Hutt ruling council refused and sent bounty hunters to attack them, Maul and his forces defeated the bounty hunters and forced the Hutts into submission as well. Returning to Zanbar, the Pike Syndicate, another powerful criminal syndicate, willingly joined their alliance, seeing the profits that lay in it. With these three factions, Maul's criminal empire, which they named the Shadow Collective, was born. Chapter 8: Conqueror of Mandalore. With a vast underworld army at his disposal, Maul laid out his strategy to Vizsla to take over Mandalore. Their forces would launch coordinated attacks on the new Mandalorian capital, Sundari, creating chaos and making Duchess Satine appear weak. Then, Death Watch would swoop in, capture the criminals, and present themselves as heroes, earning the people's support. The attack unfolded as planned. The crime syndicates ran rampant across Sundari, destabilizing the government. Death Watch, arriving in the wake of the destruction, crushed the criminals and brought them supposedly to justice. Death Watch's popularity rose in turn, making the Mandalorian people demand them to take over the government. The plan they set out worked perfectly. Duchess Satine was voted down due to her inability to deal with the criminals, and Vizsla used thunderous applause and support, declared himself the new ruler of Mandalore. Now that Vizsla had achieved his ultimate goal, he betrayed Maul, putting both him and Savage in prison, seeing that they were a danger to his rule. Maul, though, wasn't too worried about the betrayal, as he had never planned to rule alongside Vizsla anyway. Mandalore was for him to rule from the start. Imprisoned in Sundari's royal prison, Maul thought that there would certainly be a politician in there that they could use as a puppet ruler to present to the public, while he himself would rule behind the scenes. Savage and Maul break out and select the imprisoned former Prime Minister Almec as their puppet. Next up, they had to remove Vizsla. Returning to the throne room, Maul challenged Vizsla to an honorable duel in the Mandalorian tradition. A 1 versus 1 duel to the death, where the winner would claim the loyalty of Death Watch. Vizsla accepted and a duel ensued. Although Vizsla lacked the Force, he was an elite warrior, wielding both the Darksaber and taking advantage of his Mandalorian armory and jetpack, pushing Maul back at first. However, Maul's sheer ferocity proved superior in the end. After a brutal duel, Maul disarmed Vizsla and beheaded him in front of his warriors, seizing the Darksaber as his prize and claiming the throne of Mandalore. Maul's victory left the Death Watch divided. Bo-Katan and her Night Owls refused to follow an outsider, branding Maul's rule illegitimate, while other Mandalorians swore allegiance to their new Sith ruler. Maul didn't care though, he had won. After several setbacks, he had made it to the top and was now the ruler of Mandalore. Chapter 9: Vengeance on Kenobi. Shortly after his coup, Maul learned from Almec that Satine had attempted to escape, transmitting a distress call to the Jedi. Knowing of Satine's past relationship with Kenobi, Maul saw the perfect opportunity for vengeance on his hated adversary. He predicted that, unable to get to the Jedi Council support due to Mandalore's neutrality, Kenobi would come alone. As predicted, Kenobi infiltrated the palace and freed Satine, but Maul and Savage intercepted them as they attempted to escape and captured them both. Maul went on to bring them in front of the throne room and taunted Kenobi, urging him to embrace his rage. Kenobi refused though, declaring the dark side was only for the weak. Maul, furious, reminded him of the suffering he endured and promised to make Kenobi share his pain. He then activated the Darksaber and impaled Satine, forcing Kenobi to watch the love of his life die in his arms. Satisfied with his revenge, Maul smiled in content and had Kenobi thrown into the dungeon to rot in his despair. After all these years, his vengeance had come at last. His greatest rival, broken in his eyes and at his mercy, rotting away in prison, and when the time came, he would kill him. Joyful over the thoughts, he ignored the wider implications of his actions. A Mandalorian civil war had broken out, and the supporters under the leadership of Bo-Katan Kryze started a rebellion against Maul. Kenobi also was able to escape with their help, promising the Mandalorians help if he could provide it at a future point. Maul, at first furious at Kenobi's escape, was able to consolidate himself with the fact that he had deprived Kenobi of his lover and made him suffer. With that, he looked forward to his greater goal: vengeance on the galaxy, vengeance on his old master, Sidious. Chapter 10: Return of the Master. As civil war erupted on Mandalore between Maul's forces and Bo-Katan's rebels, Sidious watched the events unfold in worry. At first unconcerned of Maul's attempts, his growing power had become a potential liability to him. Hence, Sidious deemed him a rival worthy of taking down and traveled to Mandalore to eliminate him personally. Maul immediately sensed his former master's presence on Mandalore, horrified by the dark power approaching. When Sidious arrived at the throne room, Maul knelt, telling Sidious that he had always intended to rejoin his old master. But Sidious saw through the deception and wasn't interested in taking Maul back as an apprentice anyway. A duel ensued between Sidious and the two brothers. Despite fighting together, Maul and Savage were completely outmatched by Sidious's speed and overwhelming power. After separating the brothers, he easily dodged Savage's strikes before impaling Savage with both lightsabers. As Savage died, Maul cradled his brother, who lamented that he was never meant to be a Sith. Sidious only laughed, reminding Maul that he had been replaced. Filled with rage at his brother's death, Maul channeled the dark side and struck back with everything he had. For a brief moment, he seemed to hold his ground, but Sidious soon overpowered him, disarming him and ragdolling him across the room with the Force. Broken and beaten, Maul begged for mercy. Everything he had built over the last year had been destroyed in an instant by his former master. Sidious only smiled at his whimpering former apprentice, declaring that he had other uses for him before electrocuting Maul with barrages of Force lightning. Chapter 11: Final Stand against Sidious. After their duel on Mandalore, Sidious captured Maul and transported him to a remote prison on Stygian. However, Maul's loyal Death Watch forces, acting on Almac's orders, pursued Sidious's vessel, determined to rescue their leader. 2 Death Watch warriors infiltrated the prison and rescued Maul. Unbeknownst to them, though, their escape had been part of Sidious's plan all along. Sidious planned to use Maul as bait to lure Mother Talzin into the open, as he saw her as the last remaining threat to his rule. Regrouping on Zanbar, Maul re-established command over his forces. Reclaiming his Darksaber, Maul assured the Mandalorians that the war they had longed for was finally at hand. Shortly afterward, General Grievous and a Separatist fleet arrived, launching an all-out assault to destroy Maul's allies. Both sides suffered heavy casualties as Maul and his warriors fought fiercely against the droid army. Destroying 4 of Grievous's Magna Guards, Maul confronted the cyborg general directly, engaging in a duel. Though Maul held up well during the fight, Grievous ultimately kicked him back. Recognizing that he couldn't defeat Grievous here and that his forces had been decimated, Maul ordered a retreat. Rather than pursuing, Grievous allowed him to escape, knowing that Maul would inevitably seek out Mother Talzin for aid, as Dooku and Sidious had predicted. As expected, Maul reached out to Mother Talzin through the Force, calling for her guidance. She appeared before him in a swirling cloud of smoke and listened as he recounted his imprisonment and the loss of Zanzibar. Understanding that Sidious was attempting to lure her into a trap, Talzin instructed Maul to regroup on Ord Mantell, where Black Sun maintained a base of operations. Instead of confronting the Sith directly, she planned to turn their strategy against them, drawing Dooku and Grievous into a trap. Upon arriving at Ord Mantell, Maul assembled his Shadow Collective leaders. He revealed their plan to lure the Separatists into a battle, eliminating Dooku and Grievous once and for all. As preparations began, a team of Night Brothers arrived from Dathomir, sent by Mother Talzin to reinforce the army. Meanwhile, the Separatist fleet arrived in orbit and began bombarding the surface. With no time to waste, Maul ordered the attack to begin. His Death Watch forces launched Mandalorian warships into space, engaging the Separatist fleet in battle. Above Ord Mantell, Maul's fleet targeted General Grievous's command ship. After a relentless assault, his warriors secured a boarding point, allowing Maul and his Mandalorians to storm the ship. Fighting his way to the bridge, he eliminated all battle droids defending the general before beating Grievous in their rematch. With a blade to his throat, Maul gave him a choice: deactivate the droid army or die. Grievous grudgingly complied and was taken prisoner. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dooku was engaged in battle with the Night Brothers. Though he managed to slay many of them, he was eventually captured and the disabled battle droids were wiped out. Maul had won and reached out to Mother Talzin to inform her of their success. She assured him that with Dooku and Grievous captured, Sidious himself would be next. As the Shadow Collective cleared all traces of their presence from Ord Mantell, they made their way to a Mandalorian supply outpost hidden within an asteroid field. From there, Maul sent a transmission to Darth Sidious, announcing the capture of Dooku and Grievous. Unfazed, Sidious coldly instructed him to kill them, but Maul had other plans. While Grievous was locked away, Maul attempted to persuade Dooku to join him. He argued that both had been betrayed by Sidious and that together they could overthrow him. Dooku remained skeptical, but seemingly went along. Their conversation was interrupted when suddenly a Republic task force led by Obi Wan Kenobi launched an assault after having tracked the Shadow Collective. Seeing no alternative, Dooku feigned allegiance to Maul, fighting alongside him against the Jedi while Grievous took advantage of the chaos to escape. Seeing the fight against the Jedi as futile, Maul and Dooku also escape in the chaos, making course for Dathomir. Upon arrival on Dathomir, Maul told Dooku that he was aware that Dooku intended to betray him, but that he had planned for that. Dooku was brought before Mother Talzin, who materialized from the ether and began draining his life force. This ritual would allow her to fully regain her physical form, using Dooku as the sacrifice. Before the ritual could be completed, an explosion tore through the chamber, announcing the arrival of Sidious and Grievous. Sidious declared that he had come to end the game once and for all. A battle erupted in which Maul dueled Grievous for the third time, and Talzin, now possessing Dooku's body, fought Sidious. However, Sidious's power was overwhelming, forcing Talzin to release Dooku and manifest in her own physical form. Maul attempted to aid her, but Sidious unleashed a barrage of Force lightning, overpowering the Night Sister. Realizing the battle was lost, Talzin ordered Maul to flee. Though he pleaded with her to take his strength and fight on, she refused, using her last bit of magic to hurl him to safety. Dragged away by his Death Watch warriors, Maul could only watch as Grievous slowly walked up to Talzin and struck the final blow, impaling Talzin with his lightsabers and ending her life for good. Dathomir has fallen. Though Maul had escaped with his life, Sidious no longer saw him as a threat. Darth Maul, deemed a rising power in the galaxy, had been reduced to a fugitive. Chapter 12: Siege of Mandalore. Maul and his loyal forces eventually returned to Mandalore. However, this time around, Maul was broken. Every connection he had, his brother, his great mother, were all destroyed, and he was powerless to help either of them. He saw the futility of going against his former master, deeming him far too strong to ever match, despite having a glaring hatred for him. Maul went on to focus on his rule of Mandalore and the criminal organizations. During this period, Maul also established ties with the criminal organization Crimson Dawn, led by Dryden Voss. Sometime later, through a Force vision, he foresaw Anakin Skywalker as the key to Darth Sidious's ultimate plan. Seeing that he couldn't harm Sidious directly, he instead sought to eliminate Anakin to deprive his former master of a powerful apprentice, getting his revenge in that form. To lure both Anakin and Kenobi back to Mandalore, Maul orchestrated a battle yet again on Mandalore, but instead of Kenobi, Ahsoka Tano and the Republic's clone army arrived to end his rule. Maul's forces ambushed the Republic troops in the Undercity, but when he finally confronted his opponent, he was disappointed to see Ahsoka instead of Kenobi. Forced to retreat, he captured ARC Trooper Jesse and used the Force to extract information about Ahsoka's past. Sensing a shift in the galaxy's order, he warned his Shadow Collective leaders to go into hiding and sent Gar Saxon to assassinate the captive Almec before he could reveal any intelligence to the Republic. Later, Maul met Ahsoka in the throne room. There, he offered her an alliance, claiming that Sidious was unstoppable and that only by working together could they stand a chance. Ahsoka hesitated but demanded to know what Maul wanted with Anakin. Maul revealed that he had seen Skywalker's destiny, to become Sidious's next Sith apprentice and bring about galactic destruction. Unable to accept this, Ahsoka rejected Maul's offer, igniting her lightsabers. Despite Maul's experience, Ahsoka held her own in the ensuing duel. During their fight, Maul gained the upper hand shortly in a saber lock, but Ahsoka caught him off guard with a kick that sent him crashing through a window. Outside, Maul decided to escape on an awaiting ship, seeing the futility of recruiting Ahsoka to his side, deeming his plan failed. Ahsoka, however, remained relentless and pursued him across the rooftops. Ahsoka caught up to Maul near his escape point, and their duel resumed. He disarmed her, cutting through the beam she stood on and cornering her, offering her one last chance to join him. She refused, and in frustration, he struck out, but she evaded him, seized his lightsaber, and tripped him off the platform. As he fell, Ahsoka caught him with the Force. Maul, unwilling to be captured, begged her to let him die, having nothing really left to live for, warning that they were all doomed from what was to come. Ahsoka, though, refused and had him stunned and imprisoned in a Force-resistant Mandalorian vault aboard the Tribunal, a Venator-class Star Destroyer, with orders to deliver him to Coruscant. On their way to Coruscant, Sidious enacted Order 66, turning the clone troopers against the Jedi. Sensing the disturbance, Maul was moments from execution by 2 clones under Sidious's orders when Ahsoka intervened, knocking them unconscious. She freed Maul to create chaos, hoping to give herself a better chance of survival, having a second target running rampant on the Venator. Though unarmed, Maul used the Force to tear through the ship's corridors, slaughtering every clone in his path. He stormed the hyperdrive room, disabling the engines, sending the Venator crashing out of hyperspace into a descent toward a nearby moon. As the ship crumbled, Maul made his way to the hangar and, after one last hustle with Ahsoka, stole a shuttle and escaped to hyperspace. Chapter 13. A Broken Soul. Maul had long foreseen the rise of Darth Vader, Sidious's new apprentice. As the former Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side, the Sith Order achieved its final victory. With the Galactic Empire replacing the Republic and the Jedi nearly wiped out in the Great Purge, Vader, along with the Inquisitors, was tasked with hunting down any Jedi who remained. Among their targets was Maul himself, though they were never able to find him. He became a ghost in the underworld, whispered about in hushed tones, referred to by the Empire's hunters as the Shadow. Over time, Maul acquired a new double-bladed lightsaber after defeating one of the Empire's Inquisitors. After the fall of the Shadow Collective, Maul was able to take command of Crimson Dawn and wielded control over all 5 crime syndicates, preventing them from fighting one another. While some within the syndicates resented his rule, the immense wealth he generated kept most of them in line, and he eliminated anyone who challenged him. During this time, Maul learned of an ancient Sith holocron, often traveling in secrecy in order to find it, still being determined to find some way to get his revenge on Sidious. Meanwhile, Dryden Voss, his trusted lieutenant, continued to act as the public face of Crimson Dawn. Maul scoured the galaxy's Sith ruins, searching for lost knowledge and power, to gain some upper hand on his enemies. One such journey led him to Damanos, an eerie world of ash and stone, where he discovered a forgotten Sith castle. Maul broke through the walls, but within its halls was encountered with disturbing visions. A specter appeared before him. It was his brother, Savage Opress. Yet the warrior Maul faced was not truly his brother, but an illusion that rejected him outright. They clashed in a furious duel, with Savage mocking Maul's desire for vengeance, suggesting that beneath his rage, all he truly feared was being powerless. Maul, seething with fury, overpowered his opponent and drove his lightsaber through him, watching as the false Savage collapsed lifelessly. Moving deeper into the castle, Maul was confronted by another figure, General Grievous. The cyborg emerged from the shadows, attacking with the ferocity of his past enemy. Grievous taunted him, recalling the moment he had killed Maul's mother, reveling in the pain it had caused and how little power Maul had to stop him. The words cut deep, reigniting Maul's anger. He fought with relentless aggression, dismantling Grievous piece by piece. Yet the illusion of Grievous did not falter. He laughed, tormenting Maul with the knowledge that Kenobi had stolen his revenge by killing the real Grievous first. Even as Maul struck him down, there was no satisfaction, no relief, only emptiness. His rage had driven him forward for years, but even when he claimed victory, it brought him nothing. At the heart of the temple, Maul was confronted by a final specter, Qui-Gon Jinn. Unlike the others, Qui-Gon did not attack. Instead, he simply asked a question. Why? What was the true purpose of Maul's endless quest for revenge? What would he do once Sidious and Obi Wan were dead? Maul had no answer. He had never considered a future beyond vengeance. Sensing this, Qui-Gon offered him another path, a chance to leave the temple, to abandon his fruitless pursuit of destruction, and to discover who he could be without the weight of his past chaining him down. But Maul refused. He dismissed the Jedi's words, clinging stubbornly to his hatred. Qui-Gon warned him that this path could only lead to one place, a fate Maul already knew. Enraged, Maul lashed out, cutting down the specter, but Qui-Gon merely faded away. With his departure, so too did the dark energy that had drawn Maul to the temple. There was no great power, no secret weapon, only nothing. Furious, Maul stormed back to his ship, determined to continue his search for something, anything that could finally grant him the power to destroy his enemies. In doing so, he unknowingly failed the lesson the temple had tried to teach him, and proved every Spectre right. He was a broken soul driven only by his hatred and thirst for revenge. Chapter 14. A New Hope Emerges. Maul's quest for the Sith holocron ultimately led him to Malachor, where he sought a powerful weapon hidden within an ancient Sith temple. However, his attempts to enter the temple proved futile, and he found himself trapped on the desolate world after his ship was wrecked. With no means of escape, Maul was left alone, stuck on the planet for years. His isolation came to an end when an Inquisitor, the eighth brother, arrived on Malachor searching for him. Around the same time, Maul encountered a young Jedi apprentice, Ezra Bridger, who had come to the temple in search of knowledge. Sensing Ezra's potential, he began to manipulate the boy, encouraging him to tap into his emotions, his anger and fear to unlock the secrets of the Sith temple. Together, Maul and Ezra overcame a series of challenges, retrieving the Sith holocron, deepening their bond. When they reached the temple summit, they encouraged Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus and Ahsoka Tano, who were battling 3 Inquisitors. Ahsoka, immediately recognizing Maul, was wary of him but begrudgingly agreed to a temporary alliance after he helped them push back the Inquisitors. Knowing of Vader's imminent arrival, the uneasy alliance separated to get to the top of the temple in order to place the holocron into it. As they scaled the temple, Maul continued to groom Ezra as his apprentice, testing him further when they encountered the Seventh Sister. Maul easily subdued the Inquisitor, holding her in a force choke, and urged Ezra to kill her. When the boy hesitated, Maul struck her down himself, chastising Ezra for his weakness. The two continued onward as Maul subtly tightened his hold over the young Jedi. Upon sensing Vader's arrival, Maul chose not to reveal his presence to Ezra, focusing instead on dealing with the remaining Inquisitors. With Ahsoka's help, Maul killed the 5th brother, and the 8th brother plummeted to his death. With the Inquisitors eliminated, Maul made his move. He turned on Kanan, striking him down and blinding him with a vicious strike. Declaring that the Sith holocron would activate a powerful ancient weapon, Maul revealed his true intentions to the Jedi, to claim the temple's power and take Ezra as his apprentice. As he dueled Ahsoka, Kanan, despite his injury, regained his focus. Telling Ahsoka to meet Ezra at the top of the temple, a blinded Kanan prepared himself to face Maul, using the Force to sense his opponent's movements. Maul mocked him, but underestimated Kanan massively. As Maul struck out at Kanan, Kanan countered swiftly, catching Maul off guard and sending him tumbling off the temple. Though he survived the fall, Maul's plans were shattered. With Vader's arrival, there was no chance of him getting the holocron back anymore. He fled Malachor aboard a stolen Inquisitor's TIE fighter, seething with frustration. Though his attempt to claim ultimate power had failed, he remained fixated on Ezra, recognizing the boy's potential and determined to continue his influence over him. Chapter 15. Old Enemies Not Forgotten. Months later, Maul resurfaced, pursuing the rebels once again. He ambushed a transport, interrogating its crew to learn the whereabouts of Ezra Bridger and his allies. When he discovered the location of the rebel ship, the Ghost, Maul, took its crew hostage. In exchange for their lives, he demanded the Sith holocron and a Jedi holocron, knowing that their combined power could unlock great secrets. At their rendezvous point, Maul lured Kanan into an airlock and ejected him into space, believing him dead. With Kanan seemingly gone, Maul shifted his focus entirely to Ezra, urging him to merge the Jedi and Sith holocrons to unlock their hidden knowledge. Ezra sought the key to destroying the Sith, while Maul pursued an answer that had eluded him for years. As the holocrons merged, Ezra glimpsed versions of distant worlds and twin suns in a desert sky, but Maul initially saw nothing. Before they could fully unlock the holocron's secrets, Kanan, who had survived, intervened, breaking the connection. Staggering back, Maul muttered in shock, "He lives," realizing that his old enemy, Obi Wan Kenobi, was still alive. For years, he had lived in the uncertainty whether or not Sidious' Order 66 had deprived him of killing his greatest enemy or not. But after the holocron's vision, Maul was re-energized and more determined than ever to find his old enemy once again. Maul returned to Dathomir, believing the full vision remained trapped within his mind. To retrieve it, he used the dark side to torment Ezra through visions, manipulating him into coming to him. To restore his vision, Maul convinced Ezra to join him in performing an ancient Night Sister ritual. As the ritual unfolded, Maul and Ezra's minds merged again, revealing the truth. Kenobi was on a planet with twin suns and also held the key to the Sith's destruction. After the ritual, Maul made one final attempt to persuade Ezra to join him, arguing that they shared the same destiny. But Ezra refused, choosing his friends over the destruction of the Sith. Disappointed but undeterred, Maul turned away. He had gotten what he needed. With Kenobi's location within his grasp, his obsession reignited. The long hunt was reaching its climax. He would find Obi Wan Kenobi, and this time he would have his ultimate vengeance. Chapter 16. Peace at Last. Maul made his way to Tatooine. His search for Obi Wan Kenobi led him deep into the desert, but he soon realized he was lost. Exhausted and overwhelmed by the thought that he might die alone in the sands, he collapsed, screaming Kenobi's name in frustration. Yet, even as despair threatened to consume him, Maul found renewed determination and pressed on. Knowing he could not locate Kenobi on his own, he devised a plan to draw him out. Using the Matrix he had taken from the Sith holocron to reach out to Ezra Bridger. Ezra, misled by the vision Maul had sent him, traveled to Tatooine, believing he had to stop the former Sith Lord from killing Kenobi. After a series of setbacks and through Maul's influence on Ezra's mind through the Force, Ezra ended up stranded in the desert as well, barely clinging to life alongside his droid Chopper. They were then found by Kenobi, who had been tracking them. When Ezra awoke, Kenobi revealed to him that Maul had used him as a pawn, luring him to Tatooine so that he could find Kenobi himself. Just as the Jedi Master finished speaking, Maul arrived. Kenobi sent Ezra and Chopper away, wanting to face Maul himself. As Ezra left, Maul bid his apprentice Ezra farewell, then turned his full attention to Kenobi. He mocked the Jedi's meager existence, suggesting that death might be a mercy compared to the life Kenobi led. Unshaken, Kenobi countered that Maul had defined himself by his obsession with domination and vengeance, leaving him with nothing. Irritated, Maul ignited his lightsaber and slashed at the ground, extinguishing the small fire between them. Then, as realization dawned, he questioned why Kenobi was on Tatooine at all. It could not be merely to hide. He was protecting something. Or someone. With a chilling certainty, Maul understood. Kenobi was guarding the key to destroy the Sith. A child. That was what the vision of the holocron had revealed to him. Recognizing the threat Maul now posed to Luke Skywalker, Kenobi, in reaction, ignited his lightsaber and assumed his Sorasu stance, which he had used so often during the Clone Wars. Maul, in turn, activated both blades of his weapon, and the two locked eyes. Kenobi, realizing that he had risen above the warrior he was in the Clone Wars, shifted into the Ataru stance, the same one his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, had used long ago. Recognizing Qui-Gon's stance, Maul smirked and charged, intending to use the same maneuver that had allowed him to kill Qui-Gon all these years ago. A strike with the hilt of his saber aimed at Kenobi's face. But Kenobi was ready. Anticipating Maul's move, Kenobi countered swiftly, bringing his blade down, in a single decisive strike. His lightsaber sliced through the hilt of Maul's weapon and carved a fatal wound across his chest. Maul staggered, eyes widening in shock as he looked down at the injury. In this moment, he realized he had completely misread Kenobi's situation. He thought that Kenobi was a hopeless rat in the desert, cowardly waiting for someone to come and release him from this pointless existence. Maul didn't anticipate that Kenobi not only wasn't a hopeless Jedi, but actually at the height of his power, far beyond what he had been when they last met in the Clone Wars. Maul then realized that whatever Kenobi was protecting had to be worth so much that Kenobi was willing to put all his hope into it. Maul deactivated his broken lightsabers and dropped to one knee. Before he could fall, Kenobi caught him, gently lowering him to the ground. As Maul lay dying, his rage and hatred faded. In his final moments, he looked up at Kenobi and, with a desperate whisper, asked if the boy he was protecting was the Chosen One, the only being worth all of Kenobi's effort. Seeing Maul's need for closure, Kenobi softly confirmed that he was. With his last breath, Maul accepted his fate, muttering that the boy would avenge them both, him and Kenobi, by destroying Darth Sidious. And then, after years of suffering, rage, and torment, Maul finally passed away, not with anger, but with the peace of knowing that his master's reign would one day end. In a final act of respect, Kenobi gently closed Maul's eyes and laid him to rest.